this is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.
Friday. Kick off the Winter Olympics in style with the opening ceremony from Italy, featuring a special performance by Mariah Carey. Celebrate the greatest athletes from around the globe as they come together to go for gold.
Lindsey Vonn, sensational!
The opening ceremony of the Winter Olympics.
Ilya Malinin. Redefining the sport.
Friday at 8 Eastern, 7 Central on NBC and Peacock.
Body Bags with Joseph Scott Morgan. Anybody that knows me knows that over the past few years, I've developed a real love of water. And I don't mean to say that in the sense that I finally discovered showering for the first time in my life. What I mean by that is the fact that I acquired an old boat. It's nothing fancy. It's good enough for me and my precious wife. And I spend a lot of time on a local river, just cruising up and down it. Sometimes we anchor out in a little cove, and there's actually these little islands on this river that we go to, and we'll kind of ground the boat and build a fire and sit there and just talk about life and listen to music. Matter of fact, probably my favorite thing to listen to is Van Morrison while I'm sitting there. I could listen to him for hours. But today, I'm going to talk about another river, and actually a lake that is part of the bigger river. It's what we call an impoundment. The river is actually the Colorado River, and I think that just by name alone, you would probably think, oh, wow, this must run right through the heart of the Rocky Mountains. And no, it doesn't. It actually is a few states away. It runs through Texas. And there's one spot in this river that has been declared a lake. And the lake's name is Lady Bird Lake in Austin, Texas. Is there a serial killer at work there? Let's talk about it. I'm Joseph Scott Morgan, and this is Body Bags. Dave, I know you think I'm lying to you, brother, but I'm going to take you out to my boat. And we're just going to cruise up and down the river. You're going to hang out, get some sunshine, but you never have time. You're always working.
You know, I'll make the time to go to the river, but I'm a little concerned that you want to, invite me down to the river the day we're doing a show about possibly the Lady Bird Lake killer, the Rainy Street killer, whatever you want to name him or her for Austin, Texas, a serial killer on the loose, possibly, maybe, I don't know. But that's when you want to invite me to the river, is when we're talking about death around a body of water? Thanks, Joe. Let's get into this, though. Today, we're looking at Lady Bird Lake, which I didn't know anything about until I started looking into this idea that some people believe there is a serial killer at work, and they call him the Lady Bird Killer or the Rainy Street Killer. And these are people in that local area in Austin, which Austin has been a very hot spot over the last several years.
Boy,
a lot
has
of,
it.
the entertainment world. A lot of people have moved to Austin and own property and things in Austin. So,
Yeah, try to pay rent there, by the way.
is it bad?
Oh, my gosh. I've had two friends from California that moved there, and they said, wow.
Really?
Yeah. Look, when Joe Rogan shows up in a place like that and he puts roots down there, you've got all these other people that are moving in from the entertainment industry. Oh, yeah. It's going to get pricey.
It does
it's gonna
immediately.
Get pricey. Yeah.
But the bottom line, being the bottom line, in life, you have two choices. You can either choose a path that brings you joy and satisfaction, or you can choose another way. Life is like that.
Yeah.
And I choose to do something I believe makes a difference. And what you and I do on a daily basis, dealing with crime, the after effects of crime, solving crimes, and in terms of the body and what happened, to me, there are people every day that are, you and I both agree, there's no such thing as closure, but there are people who are being emotionally satisfied by understanding things a little bit better of what happened to their loved one. Or in our case, many times we're speaking for the person who can't speak for themselves anymore. And that's very important as a human being to understand that life is precious, and too many times it is disregarded. We have people that are growing up that don't believe that. They do not believe life is precious.
No,
And
they don't. And I think that it's sad enough in the case of all of these deaths, and there's a wheelbarrow full of them.
That's the thing, Joe. There are so
I know.
many here that we actually have to separate the ones out that we think might be connected.
Yeah, it's voluminous. It's sad enough that these people are found deceased, because with every body that you find along the way, there is a family that's out there. I like to use the idea of the empty chair. There's an empty chair around somebody's table that will never be occupied by that person again. And it's absolutely heartbreaking when you see it played out over and over again. And some of the issues with these so-called Lady Bird Lake deaths is that there's not connectivity necessarily with a lot of these things. It's not a vast area. I think it's just over 400 acres this lake is, and by many people's estimations, that's not a huge lake, when you consider some of the places that are out there, but it's significant enough, and you've got multiple points of entry, and we can go into that, but it's just the idea that just because you have people being found deceased in a location does not a serial event make. And you have to be very, very careful with that. And particularly when I look at it through my eyes and try to take the long view of it, and I think about the serial events that I was involved in as an investigator over the years, both in New Orleans and Atlanta, words have to be chosen very, very carefully, because you can literally send people into a frenzy. And one of my favorite movies of all time is Jaws. I love the book too, but I love the movie because the characters, just kind of pop to life. And the mayor in that, who's this real smarmy guy, he's admonishing the sheriff in this thing, because the Sheriff Brody, he's trying to secure the beach. And he says, wait a minute. He says, you say barracuda, and people say, what? Huh? You say shark? And you got panic on your hands. And we've seen this played out now, these many months, and just within the last couple of weeks, they've recovered 2 more bodies out of Lady Bird Lake. And just like words can damage people, you say things to people, maybe loved ones, you use certain terms, you say things that are not necessarily edifying. When you throw out the term serial killer into a community, you damage that community. And before we talk about anything else, I'm in no position to admonish anybody, but I would strongly suggest that people begin to kind of throttle back their rhetoric in regards to this, because now you're building reputations here, a reputation of a location where I'm sure that there have been great times had by many people along the shores there. This place was first impounded, I think, back in the 60s.
1960.
And for a long time, it was regarded as an eyesore. And until, the former First Lady stepped in, Lady Bird Johnson, and, began to work on this and establish it, clean it up, it was considered a not so desirous location. But now, and listen, just a few years ago, I got to make it, admit this. I'd never been to this location before, but just a couple of years ago, Kim and I went to CrimeCon when it was held in Austin. We had a blast there, by the way. I love the city. I love the time that we spent there. But I got to see this place. And I got to tell you, when I was looking at it, Dave, I didn't really know what I was looking at. I thought I was looking at a river, and it is technically a river. It's the Colorado River, but it's kind of cordoned off because you've got dams on each end, and that kind of plays into a lot about what we're going to talk about today.
They diverted it to create a cooling pond for a power plant is what it amounts to. It actually has a reason, for being there. The reason it exists, it actually has, it wasn't natural, it was created. And as you mentioned, you got 2 dams, you got a lot of issues going on and a lot of bodies. But just to give you an idea, Lady Bird Lake, built in 1960, it is, you mentioned, a 416 acre lake. It is primarily used for recreation now, but there have been so many deaths reported in the last couple of years that depending on how you want to frame the story, you could talk about 20 deaths. You could talk about 4 deaths. And I think it's being very dismissive to just say nothing is linked here. These are all just isolated incidents. And because some of them are, but some are not.
Right.
And that's why when I was trying to pull it all together, Joe, there was, for me, it started with a story of a person who saw a body in the lake and was like poking it with a stick kind of thing, calling the police,
Right.
And it was like another body found in Lady Bird Lake. And when you start identifying all of them as one, I think you hurt families that are mourning because you've just lumped their family victim into this pool. Very quickly, the Gilgo Beach murders,
Yes.
Rex Schuerman gets arrested and people say, okay, we have a suspect we got a suspect in 4. There's 10 bodies we're dealing with here.
Yeah.
There's something else at work. And now, is it getting any attention? No. It hopefully will.
Listen, hey, look, from when I was a child, I remember the missing and murdered children in Atlanta.
Right.
With Wayne Williams.
Yep.
Okay. Well, first off, Wayne Williams was never convicted of killing a child.
Nope.
People he was convicted of, one in particular, were adults and
Nathaniel
they're
Gator.
male escorts.
Yeah.
And here's one other thing. When he was incarcerated, children didn't stop dying in Atlanta. You have to be very, very careful. And that's why we have practices that are, associated with death investigation. You have practices of like people that profile individuals. They take all of this data and put it together. And contrary to what you see on television, the life of a profiler is not this kind of sexy thing where they're riding around in a cool car and going out to scenes. Most of the scenes that are involved in these cases in serialized events are gone. They're not showing up fresh. It's a lot of work spent at a desk and talking to people and analyzing data. And my way of thinking is, has all of the data been assessed? Because when you do things like statistical analyses, you have to consider everything: race, gender, location, and also, more importantly, you have to consider time. How long have bodies been popping up in Lady Bird Lake?
Friday. Kick off the Winter Olympics in style with the opening ceremony from Italy, featuring a special performance by Mariah Carey. Celebrate the greatest athletes from around the globe as they come together to go for gold.
Lindsey Vonn, sensational!
The opening ceremony of the Winter Olympics.
Ilya Malinin.
Redefining this sport.
Friday at 8 Eastern, 7 Central on NBC and Peacock.
I found in life that, for me at least, can't speak to anybody else, but if I have a task, it's better to compartmentalize things, to take it piece by piece. The old adage, how do you eat an elephant? You do it one bite at a time. And I look at this data relative to these Lady Bird Lake bodies. And I want to ask Dave, you're such a great wordsmith here.
Holy moly.
Give us an idea, kind of frame it out for us. What kind of numbers are we looking at with, normally when you and I are talking,
right.
I say, tell us a little bit something about the case.
Mm-hmm.
Well, here we go. Tell us a little bit something about the cases.
Right.
Because that's very, very, very important here.
The blurred lines are because of the numbers here. There have been a lot of bodies pulled out of the lake. 10 reported deaths since 2022, 4 in 2022, 5 in 2023, 1 in the past month, actually 2 in the past month now. That shows you how this has changed as I've begun reporting and putting these things together. So just dealing with those 10, and by the way, we can go up to 20, depending on how far back you go. And
exactly.
And I was telling Joe earlier that there are deaths that happen around water all the time.
All the time.
And so you can't just lump them all together and pretend there's a serial killer that has killed 22 people, at Lady Bird Lake. That would be tantamount to accusing Ted Bundy of killing everybody that died at Lake Sammamish back in the 70s. You can't do that. But,
no, hey, I got to tell you something. I was talking about my boat earlier. Last summer, we were actually sitting on the dock.
Of
and,
the bay.
Yeah.
Just watching the time.
Yeah, exactly. No, we watched a guy that was so drunk, he fell off of his boat like a couple of times.
Wow.
We alerted the people across the way, and there was a wildlife fishery guy that rode around a boat. We let him know about it. And the guy, per our witness, had gotten back into the boat each time with a lot of difficulty and help from his friends while we were just sitting on our dock. Wow. 3 hours later, they were dragging the river.
Oh, man.
And that was across the way from us. We had cruised up the river. This guy died. Wow. He fell off of his boat and drowned. Water is like dealing with a rattlesnake. If you don't know what you're doing, it is deadly. It is deadly. Our bodies are not equipped to be in a water environment. And so all you have to do is mix alcohol, drugs, a health problem. Anything can come up, and you can wind up, if you're adjacent to a lake, you can fall in.
And we actually have a situation just like that, Joe. One of the typical cases, or boy, that sounds dismissive. It's not. There's a guy named Jason John. Jason John died day before Valentine's Day last year, 2023. In the autopsy report, the Travis County Medical Examiner's Office determined his cause of death was drowning, and the manner of death was ruled accidental.
Yes.
According to the reports, 30-year-old man, Jason John, was witnessed by a bystander to be vomiting by the bank of Lady Bird Lake, and then subsequently falling and submerged into the water in the early morning of February 5th. I said February 13th a minute ago. That's when it was ruled a drowning. I apologize. But it happened on February 5th. He falls into the water, and this transient, which means homeless guy sees him fall into the water, tries to get him out and can't get him out. The transient guy goes to a hotel and calls 911. And by the time they get there, they couldn't find him.
Yeah, he's gone subsurface at that point. Yep.
And toxicology report showed, alcohol was in his system, no illegal drugs, no significant internal or external injuries, no fractures, no traumatic injuries, nothing. Just he got really drunk and apparently fell in the lake and drowned.
Well, let me throw this out to you, since we're talking in broad terms about serial perpetrators.
Right.
First off, I'm thinking back right now, going through my, I've got an imaginary paper file index going through in my mind right now. And I'm thinking, I don't think I have ever encountered, even with friends and things that I've read, I don't think that I have ever encountered a case of serial homicide. Somebody will probably prove me wrong, involving using water, and specifically a body of water, as a means to kill somebody. Now, can homicides be accomplished vis-a-vis water? Yes, they can. They can, but those generally, in my experience, have occurred in bathtubs where people have been, particularly children, where they're held beneath the surface and they're drowned. But those are, most of the time, those are one-off events. It's not like you have these events that are occurring where you've got some guy twirling his mustache over in the counter, over in the, all dressed in black, saying, I'm going to use water to kill people with.
Right.
And, you start talking about accidental drownings and things like that. You got to look at the toxicology. And as you pointed out, in this particular case, guys got alcohol on board. So how do you balance that out? And my question is to you, is that we're looking for patterns here, right?
Yes.
Well, how many of these cases have been ruled actually an accident versus a natural or versus undetermined? Or, hey, look, give it to me. If you got a homicide,
right,
let me know about it.
Well,
I'd like to know.
Here's the situation, Joe, in Austin, Texas, where Lady Bird Lake is and where Rainy Street is. Oftentimes, because of the number of bodies pulled out of the water, they refer to it, those who want to act like they have a serial killer, say Rainy Street Killer. There might be. I'm not saying there isn't. Just saying that there are a lot of people following crime right now. It's a very hot topic. There are a lot of podcasts, a lot of social media covering crime. And there are a lot of people who are web sleuths that really, you realize we're not all the same mentally. And some people bring a lot of weird baggage to how they look at a story. And so trusting somebody online that created a podcast or a show about crime doesn't give them any insight into what they're talking about unless they were a former investigator or a former forensic, something along those lines. Other than that, you've got armchair quarterbacks determining what actually happened. And what we have here we have some similar deaths. They seem to be alcohol related. They seem to have happened in the late night, early morning hours after somebody had been on Rainy Street. And the question is somebody targeting men of a specific age or specific look that is targeting them in the bars of Rainy Street and basically dumping their bodies in the lake? Is that what this is, a dumping ground? And so when we look at some of these, like we had Jason John, as I mentioned, this guy's puking on the side of the lake and falls in.
Yeah.
No illegal drugs found in his system. No traumatic injuries, just alcohol. Could something have been put in a drink that he had that made him uncontrollable? I don't know. 40-year-old Cliff Axtell. This guy works as a landscape specialist. He works at Veritas Commercial Properties. He's known for his innovative strategies in real estate. The guy's very well thought of. Married, 2 kids, excelling in his senior year at Harvard Extension School, making the dean's list each semester. This guy is a good guy, and he's working his full-time job, leading worship at his church. But Cliff Axtell is seen at Stubbs Barbecue in downtown Austin on March 5th, never makes it back home. His body is recovered in Lady Bird Lake. Stubbs Barbecue is near Rainy Street.
Yeah.
And police said the death is not being investigated as suspicious. His death is listed as undetermined. Based on the scenario I just laid out for you, who he is, what he does, how does this, it's certainly suspicious, but how do you not consider it? Did he just fall in the lake and die? I don't understand that, Joe.
Right. And so depending upon the condition of a body, when it's pulled from a body of water, that's one of the things that you're going to look for. And if you're trying to look for patterns, which you do in serial crimes, you have to find patterns relative to the physical remains. Because as we know, it's well stated, it's out there floating about. Serial killers very rarely deviate from methodologies. They get very comfortable with it. And when you say
deviate from methodologies, what are you actually saying?
Well, okay, I'll give you an example. I worked a series of deaths of prostitutes.
Okay.
Many years ago in New Orleans, and they were all up and down the I-10 corridor. It wasn't just simply in Louisiana.
Okay.
That's what I'll say about it. But in all of these cases, the individual used, in every one of these cases, a ligature to kill these okay. women. I had another case involving a series of serial killings, again, prostitutes, and the individual was using a wire, not just a ligature, but a piece of wire to choke these women out with. I've had another series where elderly women were being choked barehanded by an individual. And the reason I'm pointing this out is that it's, wow, I don't want to sound cruel or crass, but it's almost like this is the vocation. This is not an avocation.
Mm-hmm.
This is everything else in a serial killer's world is all about getting an opportunity to kill again. They might have a job, but that job is not the primary interest in their life. Their vocation is actually killing. So if you take that and you look at, say, a craftsman, I hate to use that, but where they have a certain particular set of tools that they use, they're not going to deviate from that pattern. So here's what I would say to people that may be thinking that the so-called Lady Bird Lake killer or the Rainy Street killer is a serial perpetrator. Give me the evidence that these individuals have been held underwater, because that's what would have to do. And granted, hey, look, I'm there with you. I mean, you're saying that perhaps they are inebriated or impaired by drugs, and you're only targeting one group. You're going to take them down to the water's edge, and it's going to be like some kind of weird baptism where the individual's not going to be brought up into new life, but will essentially pass on to eternity.
Friday. Kick off the Winter Olympics in style with the opening ceremony from Italy, featuring a special performance by Mariah Carey. Celebrate the greatest athletes from around the globe as they come together to go for gold.
Lindsey Vonn, sensational!
The opening ceremony of the Winter Olympics.
Ilya Malinin.
Redefining the sport.
Friday at 8 Eastern, 7 Central on NBC and Peacock.
The one thing that I do know about water is that, particularly in large bodies, you might not see it on the surface, but water does flow. It might appear on the top that it's tranquil and very peaceful, but beneath the surface, there is always some kind of current running through it, much like serialized homicide. There is always something that gives you an idea of a flow. And I think that's very important to identify here. Not just the flow of a so-called serial killer that's at work, but also the flow of the water in general, because that's going to give us an indication about bodies and where they wound up, because a water environment is not a static environment. It's always changing. Heck, even the shoreline changes. And so it's a dynamic environment. It's not like an open field where you find a body that's like lying there, and they have what's referred to as a dumping ground. We hear that term a lot. And
I actually said it a little while ago.
I know you did. And I wanted to point that out. Dumping grounds, again, just like methodologies for killings, locations where they leave bodies is very significant. And you got to have access. You got to have cover many times to do this. And I don't know if we're there, Dave. I really don't.
I want to go back to something you were talking about with the guy you witnessed with your own two eyes, drunkenly falling into the water and getting back out and getting into his boat. But eventually he did die. When in the case of Jason John, where he is described drunk throwing up on the shoreline of Lady Bird Lake in Austin, and he falls into the water, and this transient who is watching all of this can't get him out of the water. I'm a little befuddled by that, Joe. Wouldn't the water, regardless of your intoxication level, wouldn't it be enough to, if you fall in, to wake you up enough that you could get yourself out. I mean, apparently I'm wrong. I'm not going to say that. It seems odd. You're dealing with February here. The first week of February, it's not going to be warm water.
Yeah, even in Austin, I think everybody associates wrongly that Texas is a very warm place all year long. It ain't.
No.
Matter of fact, some of the coldest times in my life have been in Texas.
Right.
It gets very, very chilly there. So yeah, that can certainly have an effect that time of year. But
if it's a man-made lake, could it have almost like a bowl effect where the shoreline doesn't slowly come up; it just goes straight in, like you got a bulkhead?
It could eventually, and when you're thinking about a bulkhead, where for folks that don't understand that, it's almost like a seawall that's built in. Do you actually have a gradual shore where you kind of? And there are places along the lake where you can kind of walk in gradually, but are there places where you could fall over? And if you're impaired in some way, are you going to be able to swim back up to the top and grab the edge and that sort of thing and pull yourself out? Well, let's face it, the drunker you are, the less control you have over your motor skills. And so with all of these cases that we're thinking about here, you have to take that into consideration. That's one of the reasons in these cases in particular that toxicology is going to play such an incredible role, because you get an idea as to perhaps what their state of mind was. And it's not just alcohol. Obviously, you're talking about any kind of illicit substance that they have on board at the time of their death. The trick is, can you get to the body soon enough in order to draw the samples that you would need in order to assess that? If the body is so degraded, perhaps that might be bespoiled. And there's a few of these cases that have been left undetermined. Mm-hmm. My thought is that maybe the bodies were degraded or decomposed to a certain point where they couldn't make that assessment, with a lot of concrete evidence, scientific evidence.
Does a body get, if it's left on the shoreline or in the grass, it would decompose a certain way based on temperature and things like that, and animals. But in water, would the body, I know it would decompose differently, but what would be the difference?
Oh, yeah. Actually, here's kind of a little factoid for people. If you have you've heard the term adipose. Adipose refers to I have not heard the term. You haven't? Okay. So the term adipose refers to fat. Okay. And one of the things that you see manifested on bodies that have been submerged in water many times is called adipocere. And adipocere is, old timers used to refer to it as death wax. And literally, it's the fatty tissue beneath the skin. And this happens in aquatic environments where it almost blossoms out. And the only thing I can really tell people what it looks like is hardened cottage cheese, only slightly yellow. Some people will refer to it as having a cauliflower-like appearance to it. And what's really weird, the rest of the body might be kind of softened up, but when you tap the surface of the adipocere, many times it'll have the firmness of an overinflated basketball. It's a really weird thing. So, and that's, for instance, if we have a body that is found up in a wooded area and it has adipocere, we're going to know that maybe somebody pulled the body out of the water after a protracted period of time, planted the body there, or left the body there after it had been in a waterborne environment. So it's one of those weird little things. You get the distribution of like postmortem lividity, the settling of blood. It's going to be all over the place. It's almost like the body is in a zero gravity environment, so it's affecting the settling of blood many times. So those are just a couple of little things that we look for.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's bizarre. Not to mention aquatic life, and of course that's going to vary from from saltwater or brackish water to freshwater. Freshwater, one of the things you're going to be looking for with marine life in particular, in my experience at least, are crawfish, Some folks say crayfish. I say crawfish. That will feast on the body.
Right.
You'll see that many times, and also the topography of the water itself. What lies beneath? Because a lot of these lakes, you don't see it. If you could drain a lake and look at it, you'll see all kinds of debris down there. I mean, all manner of things, particularly like trees, and that brings me to trees and brush. That brings me to this idea that you've got this Ladybird Lake that is dammed on both ends. Well, guess what happens with a dam? They have to do a dam release periodically because upstream and downstream, I think this is correct, this body of water, the Colorado River, plays a big role in agriculture. Mm-hmm. And so they have to use this for water sources for agriculture. They have to use it to provide drinking water in some circumstances. And not to mention the wreck stuff, which is kind of an aside. Mm-hmm. But when you do a dam release, Dave, I don't know if you've ever been around a dam when it releases.
First time I saw it, I was scared to death.
Oh, it's terrifying. I mean, it will make mighty men tremble.
Yep.
And you don't want to be near it. I've worked a couple of cases in Atlanta that involve dam releases. And when they blow that horn, buddy, you better be scrambling. It's terrifying. And so when that wall of water pushes out, the dynamics of that are going to affect the distribution of bodies that are in there. So let's just say that a body went in, I don't know, let's just use Rainy Street because they seem to be really hot on this topic. The Rainy Street killer. Isn't it amazing how they always apply a term to what they perceive as serial events? They've got to hang some kind of moniker on it. But anyway, when that dam release happens, you see this push of water. If the body or a person goes in adjacent to Rainy Street, that can push the body in any number of ways because it's, again, going back to this idea of being on dry land, the body is not set in that one position. And you have to think also about the distribution of all of these bodies. So if we took a big map and put it up and pinpointed where the bodies were located, you would have to think, okay, where could this person have gone in and wound up in? Well, unless the body is hung up in brush adjacent to the shore, it's a crapshoot. You have no idea because where you find the bodies is not necessarily where they went in. And, one of the big things that I'm thinking about is this double murder that happened on Lake Oconee in Georgia a few years ago. I think it's the Dermans. I don't know if you remember this case with the two elderly people. The husband was found decapitated, and the wife was found weighted down in a cove that was almost 3 miles away from her home that sat on Lake Oconee. I might have the mileage wrong, but it was a distance away. Well, she was weighted down. You have to ask the question. And again, that's a dam release lake. And so was her body pushed to that location or did somebody go in a boat and drop her there? Could her body have floated that far with a weight on it? I don't know, but you have evidence of this. And that's why these cases are so very difficult to work from a profiling standpoint. When you begin to think about the distribution of them, where's the individual going to have opportunity and access and the means in order to get a body out into the water? How far away are they from shore? What depth are they at? So you've got all of these considerations, Dave, to think about. And
we're actually, as we mentioned, we talking about 20 bodies that is so dismissive, and I apologize. There are 20 people, give or take, that have been pulled from the lake in a period of time that you can deal with, okay? Say 2 or 3 years, 4 years. You can go back further than that. But if you the people who want to make this into a serial killer event will pick out an area of 2 or 3 years and say, we've pulled X number of bodies out of Ladybird Lake since then. And what I did was pull these 4 that are similar.
Oh,
and
okay. Yeah.
In each one of these, as we've already covered with with Jason John, okay, seen
Right.
throwing up on the side of the lake, falls in. A guy sees this all happen, calls 911, can't get him out. So when they do get to him, he's dead. You've got Cliff Axtell. He was drinking. Take that back. Cliff Axtell was at Stubbs Barbecue, which, by the way, it's in downtown Austin. It's right near Rainey Street, and they have a very vivid nightlife. A lot of adult beverages being served. His body was recovered in Lady Bird Lake, and police gave that an undetermined. They don't know what happened, how he died or anything else. Jonathan Honey, he's from Washington, D.C., that was visiting Austin for a bachelor trip. He was drinking with friends at bars along Rainey Street. He leaves to find some food. I'm hungry, guys. I'm grabbing a bite to eat. He gets something to eat at a food truck on Rainey Street and then vanishes. His friends report him missing. His body is recovered the next day in Lady Bird Lake. Alcohol is found in his system, along with a couple of over-the-counter prescribed medications. Medical examiner rules Honey's death as an accidental drowning. Again, we're back to the same thing. We got 3 guys, give or take same age, and all end up dying in and around Lady Bird Lake. So that's when you get down to all of the others, they don't fit. None of them fit a profile. These 4, and there's another one that I think is Moga de Gale, I think is his name. And they kind of fit that same pattern of drinking with friends late at night, end up in Lady Bird Lake, drowned. But all the others are kind of explainable as something other than that. But these 4, you can't really explain. How did 4 people end up drowning?
Well, yeah, and I think that
by themselves that night.
Right. And so when you think about there's a 30-year-old by the name of Christopher Hayes Clark.
Oh, yeah, I left him out.
Jonathan Honey, 33.
Yeah, that was
Cliff Axtell that you had mentioned, and then Jason John.
Right.
And I guess they're similar in the sense that they happened in approximating, one another time-wise. But is that the work? Is that truly the work? Let's just be very open. Is that truly the work of some sinister master criminal out there, or is this just dumb fate here, if you will, where these individuals are inebriated or compromised in some other way physically, where they fall in, maybe they're disoriented, I have no idea, and they get turned around and they happen to go into the water. I don't know. To me, one of the dangers here, I think, there's actually a couple of them. First off, when you start throwing around the term, and I say you, I don't mean you, I mean the media.
Right.
Let that sink in for a minute. When the media starts throwing around the term serial killer and they have other people that are feeding into this, it's one thing to speculate on a case, but now you become a driver of fear in a particular location. Do I want to take my kids down there? And then that, from the general public, goes up to the people in charge, and they say, why aren't you doing anything else? Why aren't you doing anything about this serial killer? Well, first off, we don't have a serial killer. And the chief, I think it was the chief of police. Let's see, what was that guy's name? Chief Greenwald. He had stated in April of 2023 that he's dealing with rumors. Can you imagine every time he goes out in public? And I know he gets paid to do a job, but every time he goes out in public, he has to address this issue. And trust me, Austin's got a lot of other issues that have to be dealt with. He's being asked, well, where's why aren't you guys doing anything about the serial killer? It's like, what serial killer are you referring to? What proof do you have that there is actually a serial killer at work here in Austin? Please explain that to me. Give me the details. Do you know something that I don't know, or my investigators don't know, or that the medical examiner doesn't know? If you have information, please tell us and lay it out, in detail, so that we understand exactly what you're talking about. Because Lord knows if we have a serial killer, we want to interdict the situation and put it to rest. I mean, the chief's not sitting around thinking, oh my gosh, serial killer, wow, this will really get us on the map. We're just going to allow this to go on and on forever. They're going to throw the full weight and force. I've been on serial killer task force. I have seen what kind of force is brought to bear on these things. Mm-hmm. And you can read the room real easy relative to this by virtue of who's involved in the overall investigation. Because when a serial killer is actually identified in a location, those elected officials, and you can kind of, they're the barometer for this, the last thing they want is to have open cases related to a serial killer. And the last thing they also want is to not be demonstrating positive action going forward to resolve this issue. There is nothing that will, get somebody, out of office or have fingers pointed at them quicker than something like this, because it literally terrifies the public. It's like I said, earlier about the analogy with Jaws. You say barracuda, people say what? You say shark. Game's on then. I'm Joseph Scott Morgan, and this is Body Bags.
Aldous Hodge returns as Alex Cross, your favorite detective on television, for Season 2 of the hit show Cross, premiering February 11th exclusively on Prime Video. Critics called Season 1 one of the year's best shows, with over 40 million viewers worldwide. And on February 11th, the story continues with a new season. From creator Ben Watkins and based upon characters created by James Patterson, Cross is Washington, D.C.'s most brilliant homicide detective and forensic psychologist. Fresh off his capture of the infamous serial killer The Fanboy, Cross teams up with the FBI to hunt down a vigilante serial killer targeting corrupt billionaires. As the case unfolds, Cross navigates a moral crossroads where the lines between justice and vengeance are blurred. Cross is back and better than ever. This season, get ready for a new case, higher stakes, but the same Cross. Watch Season 2 of Cross. New episodes weekly starting February 11th, only on Prime Video.
This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed Human.